We built a world of maximum comfort to eliminate stress, yet paradoxically, we've only grown more anxious. In 2021, over 359 million people worldwide suffered from anxiety disorders. That's the population of an entire country, like the US, living in constant fear. We create sterile environments to avoid problems, but this weakens our psychological immunity. It works like a muscle. If you never lift anything heavier than a smartphone, your muscles will atrophy and you won't even be able to lift a bag of groceries. Similarly, our psyche becomes fragile without regular stress, unable to cope with real-world pressures. What if the solution to this ultra-modern problem was found 2,300 years ago by people who lived in constant chaos? What if it's not just a philosophy, but an operating system for the mind? This system produced individuals whose actions seem illogical to modern people. And in these paradoxes lies the key. First question: how could Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in the Roman Empire, voluntarily sleep on a hard floor and eat stale bread if his goal wasn't suffering, but imperturbable tranquility? The answer to this question will be in Part 4. Second question: how did Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who waged endless wars, survived the Antonine Plague, and endured betrayal from loved ones, possess more inner resilience than a modern person in a safe, air-conditioned office? He wrote his meditations in a tent in a military camp on the banks of the Danube, hearing soldiers' cries and feeling the biting wind. We'll reveal his secret tool in Part 8. And the third question: what explains the fact that a philosophy formulated 300 years ago today forms the basis of the most effective psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, proving more potent than many modern methods? These aren't rhetorical riddles. They are parts of an ancient protocol. And this video isn't a history lecture. It's a practical guide to installing it. Over the next 20 minutes, you'll receive a 7-day protocol, a time-tested operating system for your mind that will allow you to filter out 99% of unnecessary anxieties. There are no abstract musings or just think positive advice here. This is an arsenal of concrete practical tools you can apply immediately after watching. The end result: a transition from a state of reactivity and anxiety to one of conscious control over your reactions, clarity of thought, and emotional resilience. 7 days, 7 specific tools, and so you know exactly when you'll receive the key tools. Here's your journey's roadmap. In just 4 minutes, we'll break down the Stoics' main filter, the dichotomy of control. This tool, from the very first seconds of its application, cuts off most of your worries. In 9 minutes, you'll learn why voluntary discomfort is a scientifically proven inoculation against future stresses, and how one of Rome's wealthiest men applied it. And in 19 minutes, we'll reach the culmination. You'll see how the personal diary of a Roman emperor, written in a military camp, laid the foundation for the most effective modern psychotherapy. We start with the chaos of modern anxiety and end with a clear system of control. Day 1 begins right now. Our attempts to control everything, traffic, weather, others' opinions, lead not to order, but to increased inner anxiety. Why does the pursuit of control deprive us of it? The Stoics offered the first tool, the dichotomy of control, dividing the world into 2 parts: what is within our power, our thoughts, reactions, actions, and what is not, everything else. The logic seems obvious, but this simplicity is an illusion. Those 359 million people suffer from anxiety not because they have more problems, but because 99% of their mental energy is spent on things outside their control. Marcus Aurelius, at the epicenter of plague and war, couldn't control the chaos around him, but he could control his decisions. This explains why he maintained clarity of mind while the empire was crumbling. But how do you teach the brain to see this distinction in real time when emotions are running high? Imagine you've been fired. For most, it's a catastrophe. For a Stoic, it's just information. How can one perceive such an event without panic? Let's apply the dichotomy. The fact of the firing has already occurred. It's beyond our control. But what we do next, updating our resume, calling contacts, learning new skills, is entirely within our power. Studies show that 9 out of 10 people in such a situation spend weeks mentally replaying the injustice of the dismissal, blaming their boss, worrying about the future. All of this is outside their control. They get stuck in a past that cannot be changed. Stoicism is not about suppressing emotions, but about surgically precise redirection of energy from the useless to the useful. It's a skill, but this wasn't the only threat. The next danger proved even more insidious: the fear of losing what you already have. Why does our mind so desperately cling to what is clearly beyond its power? Why do we spend hours worrying about an angry comment online? The answer lies in evolution. Our brain inherited the ancient fight-or-flight mechanism, which doesn't differentiate between a real threat, like a saber-toothed tiger, and a symbolic one, like a nasty email. In the ancient world, this mechanism saved lives once a week. In today's information stream, it's activated hundreds of times a day. News, social media, notifications. These are constant streams of threats to which our brain reacts, depleting its resources. The dichotomy of control is a cognitive switch for this ancient alarm system. It works like an overly sensitive smoke detector, triggered by steam from a kettle or burnt toast, flooding everything with a foam of panic. This practice led directly to the next, deeper level of training, working with the fear of loss. So, on day 1, we acquired the Stoic's primary filter. We learned to draw a clear line between what's worth our energy and what's merely the noise of reality. This is the foundation. This filter works excellently with external irritants. But what about internal fears, especially the fear of losing what we hold dear? Health, loved ones, stability. For this, another tool is needed. Tomorrow, we will build walls upon our foundation. We will learn not to fear loss using a shocking, yet incredibly powerful technique. It will show us how to stop fearing loss and truly appreciate the present. How could it be that vividly imagining the loss of everything you love, your job, your home, even your loved ones, could actually make you happier? This question breaks all the logic of modern positive thinking culture. The Stoics called this negative visualization. The mechanism is simple. By mentally imagining that we have lost something, we begin to truly appreciate it when we return to reality. But this isn't just an exercise in imagination. Modern culture's toxic positivity makes us chase after more, devaluing what we already have. Negative visualization is a direct antidote. It's not pessimism, but a strategic dose of realism that the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. You only truly appreciate water after a long thirst. This technique mentally creates a thirst for what we already possess, so that every sip of reality brings joy. But what was most striking was how this technique was applied by a man who truly had a lot to lose. Seneca, Emperor Nero's tutor and one of Rome's wealthiest men, mentally rehearsed scenarios of his own demise every day. He lived in luxury. Yet his mind was constantly in the training ground of poverty, exile, and death. Every morning he asked himself, "What's the worst that could happen today?" He mentally lost his fortune, went into exile, received an order for suicide from his unstable pupil. When messengers from Nero did arrive with the order in 65 AD, They found him not in panic, but in tranquility. He comforted his weeping wife. He wasn't shocked because he had already died hundreds of times in his mind. This moment was not a catastrophe for him, but a familiar scenario. His calm was not innate, but trained. The key to this lay in the correct dosage of this mental inoculation. Let's conduct a 10-second experiment. Look at the cup of coffee on your table or your phone. Most likely, you don't feel anything special. It's just part of the background. Now close your eyes and for 5 seconds imagine it's gone. Forever. A morning without that coffee, a day without that phone. Now open your eyes. The feeling has changed. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. We quickly get used to good things, and they stop bringing joy. Negative visualization is a way to hack this mechanism. This exercise is like a mental kettlebell. You lift it not to suffer, but to become stronger. And the next step will reveal how to strengthen not only the mind, but also the body. So, on day 2, we mastered negative visualization. We understood that true gratitude is born not from affirmations, but from the awareness of the fragility of everything we possess. We learned to mentally prepare ourselves for difficulties. But what if we go further? What if we don't just imagine discomfort, but consciously and in measured doses introduce it into our lives? This is a transition from mental to physical training. Tomorrow, we will answer the question about Seneca sleeping on the floor. We will learn how he used physical discomfort to buy himself mental freedom. Why did Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, whose fortune today would be valued in billions of dollars, voluntarily sleep on a hard floor and for several days a month eat food costing less than a single coin? This wasn't masochism. This was the third tool, the practice of voluntary discomfort. Each time he lay on the floor, he asked himself, "Is this what I was so afraid of?" He inoculated himself against the fear of poverty, so that money would not have power over him. People who avoid the slightest discomfort suffer more from anxiety because broken Wi-Fi is a catastrophe for them. Seneca, however, bought his freedom at the cost of a small inconvenience. Behind this lies a powerful biological mechanism that modern science is only beginning to understand. What do cold water immersion, intermittent fasting, and Stoic philosophy have in common? They all utilize the same principle: hormesis. It states that what kills in large doses, in small doses makes stronger. Muscle strain causes micro tears but leads to increased strength. This principle also applies to our psyche. We live in a sterile psychological environment, and our psyche becomes fragile, like a muscle without exercise. Voluntary discomfort is not just tempering the spirit, but a conscious application of hormesis. It's a scientific method for building psychological armor. The psyche is like a kitchen knife. If kept in a velvet sheath, it will remain dull. To make it sharp, it needs to be honed on a hard stone. Hormesis is that sharpening stone. Here are 3 safe levels of training for day 3. Level 1. Micro discomfort. Take a cold shower, take the stairs instead of the elevator. Leave your phone at home for an hour during a walk. Goal: notice the irritation and consciously experience it. Level 2. Social discomfort. Ask a silly question in a public place. Start a short conversation with a stranger. Goal: realize that the consequences you fear almost never materialize. Level 3. Advanced discomfort. Spend a day eating very simple food or go 24 hours without social media. The main task at all levels, not to suffer, but to observe your reaction and ask, "Can I endure this?" The answer is almost always yes. Which of these practices causes you the most resistance? That's likely the one that will be most beneficial. So, on day 3, we transitioned from theory to practice. We strengthened body and spirit, expanding our comfort zone and reducing fear of difficulties. We learned to cope with discomfort that we can control. But what if a problem seems too big, global, insurmountable? What to do when anxiety overwhelms you due to the sheer scale of events? Tomorrow, we will learn to shrink any problem, even the most enormous, down to microscopic size using an elegant mental technique that Marcus Aurelius adored. We will learn to look at our problems through the eyes of the cosmos, and that will change everything. How can one solve a problem without even touching it? The Stoics called this fourth tool the view from above. The mechanism is simple. Mentally distance yourself from your problem, first to a bird's eye view, then to orbit, and then beyond the galaxy. Anxiety makes us look at a problem through a microscope. It seems enormous and fills all mental space. The view from above is a forced change of lens. Our anxiety works like optical focus. When you bring your finger close to your eye, it seems huge and blocks out the whole world. Move it to arm's length, and it returns to its true size. Marcus Aurelius constantly used this technique to avoid drowning in a flood of petty intrigues. And the situation worsened when he had to apply this amidst war and epidemics. Imagine the emperor in a cold military camp on the empire's border. Around him, the Marcomannic Wars. At home, the Antonine Plague. News arrives of his best general's betrayal. In his meditations, he constantly reminded himself, look down from above on the earth. A tiny point. He mentally placed his problems in the context of eternity. This wasn't a form of escapism. On the contrary, it was a calibration tool that allowed him to instantly separate strategic tasks from petty grievances. In the midst of the camp, reeking of leather, sweat, and fear, the emperor closed his eyes and imagined the silence of the cosmos, so that his personal problems would shrink to the size of a speck of dust. This technique zeroes out the ego, which screams, "My problem is the most important in the world." While others suffered from chaos, he transformed it into a tool. Now, it's your turn. Think about a problem that's bothering you right now. Step 1. Imagine looking at yourself from the ceiling of the room. Step 2. Now from a bird's eye view, seeing your home. Step 3. Ascend to orbit, seeing your city as a small speck. Step 4. Distance yourself further, seeing Earth as a blue marble in space. Step 5. Now imagine yourself from another galaxy. Where is your problem? Upon returning, ask yourself 2 questions. Will this matter in a year? And in 10 years? The goal is not to prove that our problems are unimportant, but to restore them to their true scale, not one inflated by anxiety. Which problem that seemed enormous an hour ago now looks a little smaller? So, on day 4, we mastered the view from above. We learned to devalue minor problems and restore major ones to their true scale. This technique helps cope with problems within life. But there is one fact that defines the very framework of our lives. It's finitude. Modern culture avoids thoughts of death, considering them depressing. The Stoics did the exact opposite. They looked death squarely in the face, not to fall into despair, but to find a source of clarity and meaning. Tomorrow, we will confront our own fear of death, not to find horror there, but the key to a fulfilling life. How can the most unpleasant thought of one's own finitude become the most effective tool for a meaningful life? The Stoics called this 5th tool memento mori. Remember death. At first glance, it's simply a call to appreciate the moment, but that simplicity is an illusion. The reality is that 99% of our daily actions grievances, and anxieties wouldn't pass the deathbed test. We spend our only non-renewable currency, time, on things we would deem trivial. Marcus Aurelius, seeing the plague daily claim thousands of his soldiers, wrote about death not to despair, but to rule justly precisely that day. This same mental code helped create one of the most valuable companies in modern history. What do a Roman emperor and the tech visionary who created the iPhone have in common? In his famous Stanford speech, Steve Jobs said that the thought of imminent death is the best way to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. But this idea was formulated almost verbatim 1800 years before him. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." It's the same operating system. Awareness of finitude burns away everything secondary: fear, doubt, pride. And the Stoics left us a simple question that transforms this philosophy into a daily tool. Here's the exercise for day 5. Every morning, ask yourself one question. If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? This question isn't about morbid thoughts. It instantly highlights the gap between what you're doing and what truly matters to you. As Jobs said, if the answer is no for too many days in a row, you know you need to change something. This calibration takes just 30 seconds. How many days in a row has your answer already been no? So, on day 5, we learned to use the most powerful filter of reality, the awareness of our mortality. This cuts away the unimportant. But what about the things we don't choose, but which cause us pain? Illnesses, betrayals, failures. Accepting one's mortality is one thing, but how do we accept the blows of fate that are happening right now? Tomorrow, we will explore the most complex and powerful tool in the entire Stoic arsenal: amor fati, or love of one's fate. We will learn not just to tolerate, but to love the worst moments of our lives. What if the worst thing that happened to you, a firing, a betrayal, a failure, was actually the best event in your life? This seems absurd, contradicting all our experience. The Stoics called this sixth tool amor fati, love of fate. At the first level, it's simply accepting the inevitable. It's pointless to be angry at the rain. But the reality is that 90% of our suffering is caused not by the event itself, but by our mental war with it. Thoughts like, "This shouldn't have happened." Amor fati is the complete cessation of this exhausting civil war in the mind. But the Stoics go further. They suggest not just accepting reality, but loving it. Not just, okay, that happened, but yes, that happened, and it's good. The key to this transformation lies in a metaphor Marcus Aurelius used to describe the ideal mind. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way, he wrote. What does this mean? He explained it through the metaphor of fire. A blazing fire turns everything thrown into it into flame and light. It's not just about enduring difficulties. The metaphor is deeper. Fire doesn't just endure, it uses what's thrown into it. It feeds on it. Any problem, failure, criticism, these are fuel for our inner fire. They can either extinguish us, if we are a weak flame, or make us stronger, brighter, and wiser. Amor fati is not resignation, but an alchemy of the mind, transforming the lead of circumstances into the gold of character. But this powerful tool doesn't work in a vacuum. It is the pinnacle of the entire system. We've examined 6 different tools. How do they work together? The dichotomy of control says we cannot choose events. Amor fati says we can choose to love the events that befall us. But it's an interconnected network. Negative visualization and memento mori prepare us for losses, while amor fati teaches us to extract meaning from them. Voluntary discomfort trains our will to withstand the blows of fate that Amor Fati teaches us to love. The view from above provides perspective, so we don't fixate on what Amor Fati helps us accept. These aren't separate tricks, but a unified operating system for the mind. Each tool is a module that strengthens the entire system, but there is a final, seventh element that serves as the interface for daily interaction with this system. So, in 6 days we've assembled nearly the entire arsenal, from the fundamental division of control to the highest form of accepting fate. Only one final step remains, which transforms this knowledge from abstract philosophy into concrete, daily wisdom. This step will explain how the Emperor of Rome coped with chaos and why his personal writings became so important today. Tomorrow, we'll delve into Marcus Aurelius's personal journal to understand how this simple habit led to a revolution in modern psychology, answering the main question of our investigation. How did the emperor's personal, almost somber, notes, written in a military tent 1800 years ago, become the most powerful tool in scientific psychotherapy? What is the secret of these texts, which he never intended for publication? The seventh and final tool: journaling and reflection. But Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is not just a diary. He didn't describe events. He dissected his thoughts. He caught his automatic reactions: anger, fear, resentment, and challenged them. Is this within my control? What would the universe think of this? He was literally engaging in what today is called cognitive restructuring, identifying irrational beliefs and replacing them with rational ones. The entire modern cognitive behavioral therapy is built upon this simple algorithm. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is the gold standard for treating anxiety disorders. Its central idea was formulated by the Stoic Epictetus. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. CBT's goal is to teach individuals to identify their automatic negative thoughts and replace them with more realistic ones. The founders of CBT, Aaron Beck and Albert Ellis, acknowledged that they rediscovered and systematized what the Stoics did intuitively. And this is the answer to our main question. 359 million people suffer from anxiety, while a scientifically proven protocol to combat it was formulated 2,300 years ago. Stoicism is not merely a philosophy. It is proto-CBT, an operating system for the mind, whose effectiveness has been confirmed by hundreds of studies. Now it's your turn. Here's a 3-minute self-CBT session. Step 1. Take a recent event that caused you anxiety. Describe it objectively, like a surveillance camera. Step 2. Write down your automatic thought about it. I'll never succeed. He doesn't respect me. Step 3. Write a rational response using the tools you've learned. This is outside my control, but my reaction is within it. Perhaps there are other explanations for his behavior. Congratulations. You've just conducted your first session of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's not magic. It's a skill that's trained like a muscle. Which automatic thought plagues you most often? In 7 days, we've assembled the complete Stoic arsenal. We've journeyed from ancient Rome to the modern psychotherapist's office, and we've discovered that ancient philosophy and cutting-edge science speak to the same truth. The key to tranquility lies not in changing the world, but in changing our thoughts about it. All 7 tools are aimed at training this skill. Now that we have all the components, it's time to assemble them into a single, simple system for daily use. In the final part, in 3 minutes, we will build this structure and answer the main question: who will you choose to be? Now that we have all the components, let's assemble them into a unified system. Imagine we are building the edifice of your psychological resilience. Its foundation is the first and primary tool, the dichotomy of control. It's not just a technique, it's an operating system working in the background. It acts like a bouncer for your mind. Before you start to worry, you ask, "Is this within my power?" If the answer is no, the thought is not allowed in. This filter works like a sieve. It sifts through all incoming problems, leaving only what requires your intervention. All the petty dust of others' opinions and hypothetical fears falls away. Without this filter, you fight the world. With it, you work on yourself. Upon this foundation, we build a training hall. These are 3 proactive practices that temper our spirit, even when everything is going well. Negative visualization and memento mori are mental inoculations against the fear of loss. They train the mind to appreciate what it has and not to fear the inevitable. And voluntary discomfort is a physical training of the will. 2 days a month, Seneca lived like a pauper, eating only stale bread and water, to make himself invulnerable to the blows of fate. These are your daily workouts, which must be performed regularly, like going to the gym, to create psychological armor. Which of these workouts do you fear starting the most? We have the foundation and the training hall. What remains is the control panel, tools we use in real time when facing problems. The view from above is a zoom-out button that instantly reduces a problem's significance. Amor fati is a mode switch that transforms an obstacle from a threat into an opportunity. And journaling is a system log where you analyze failures, track progress, and calibrate your system. This is your control panel for navigating the chaos of life. We've given you the system, but whether it works depends on one final choice. And this choice you make every day. This entire philosophy, all 7 tools, boil down to one simple question. Who do you consider yourself to be? The architect of your internal reactions to the world, or a victim of external circumstances? The architect uses tools to build their tranquility, regardless of the weather outside. The victim hands over the remote control of their emotions to other people and events. These aren't labels, but roles we choose. Write just one word in the comments below this video, architect or victim. No explanations, just your choice. Let's see who among us there are more of. Your choice today will determine your tranquility tomorrow.